how much could I get away with? You know, like how crazy can I, like, does that ever cross your mind? Do you ever feel like guilt, or is it like, oh, let's see how far we can push this?
Well, I always say guilt is not an emotion I feel readily.
In layman's terms, can you explain what a dominatrix does, who a dominatrix is? Tell me all about it.
Yeah. Well, I would say that dominatrix is probably more used for a professional sex worker. Although I
Okay.
want to clarify that I'm also a lifestyle dom. So this is what I do in my personal life as well. And this is something that I enjoy. But a professional dominatrix would be someone who is doing BDSM from a top or dominant perspective of things. So that could include things like corporal punishment, foot fetish, financial domination, electroplay, things like that. I am exchanging money for my time for those services. And a lot of what I do is, well, I do in-person work, but I also have, because of the pandemic, have quite a robust online presence as well in terms of doing online sessions through text, phone, cam, videos, selling my socks, stuff like that. OnlyFans,
Oh,
loyal
I have so
fans.
many questions for you. Oh my God. Okay. So, like, what brought you to this in particular? Was there any other forms of set work? Oh, let me try that again. So, what brought you to this in particular? Were there any other forms of sex work that were interesting to you? Like, did you ever either dabble, or were you interested in anything else?
Not really. I mean, honestly, many years ago, I was interested in doing escorting, and the only reason I didn't is because of the illegality and the screening process. I just didn't feel like I
Yeah.
was up to be able to do that, for me personally. And then, just doing dom work, just I fell into it really easily and really naturally. And again, it was something that I was doing in my personal life, so it was really easy for me to make that leap, or just take over and doing that professionally. And yeah, like, what, it's been working out really well.
Yeah. Are dominatrices only women? Is there a different term if you're a male identifying person doing dom work?
Non-existent. No, I'm sorry. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no alpha males. Was that you? No, that was
Yeah.
some other TikTok this morning. No, okay, yes, okay. Let's not be male dom phobic. Okay, male doms exist, but I would say they're dominant, or male doms. Like, so dom, it would be like dom female would be DOMME, and male dom would be DOM. Or people refer
Interesting.
to them as like, I mean, everyone has their own moniker and how they want to be referred to.
Yeah.
So, I
Sure.
use mistress, dominatrix, dom, dominant.
I was going to ask you, how would you like to be referred on this podcast? Do you
You can call.
want the full mistress? Because I'll give it to you if you want it.
Well, you got to pay for it, Tori. You
Yeah.
can call
Okay.
me
Cool.
Justine. Yeah, I say that you only get to call me mistress when you're down on your knees and your wallet is in my hands.
There we go. So one of the concepts as a financial educator that I've wondered about and heard about is, you mentioned earlier, being a findom. Talk to me about that. Is money really the object, or is it just like a tool like anything else that you might use in BDSM?
Yeah, I mean, it's both. I mean, like, look, anything that you're doing in this profession is for the money. It's a job, it's my
Sure,
career.
sure, sure.
So, and I would say that I dabble in findom. Like, I wouldn't, because that's not the main source of my income or what I'm doing. Is just certainly like one of the most interesting aspects, I think, of like, femdom, findom things. But yeah, it's the exchange is that, someone is giving me a lot of money, or so much more money than I would normally consider with fair trade, for some kind of product or interaction with them, where it's like I could just be chatting with someone and I say, okay, well, if you want me to keep chatting with you online, you have to just tip me $100. And they're like, oh, okay. So, and
Mm.
to just continue the chat, but we would be chatting anyway, and they're paying for that exchange, but they're just paying so much more for that.
Exorbitant prices. Yeah. And
Yes.
it's about that control financially, right? Is that the appeal?
Yeah. I mean, well, it's It's not so much my desire. I mean, well, of course, it's my desire in
Oh,
the
of
way that it's
course.
everyone's desire to get a lot of money for just
Yeah.
kind of sitting here and looking pretty. But
Right, but like a client,
it's
they're coming to you for that kind of like control aspect or being controlled.
yes, they are. But it's also things like, yes, they want to have their accounts drained, or, give me lots of money, or buy my clips, or, buy me presents and clear my wish list, or just pay a bill or something like that. So all kinds of different things. So
For you as someone who has that level of control, like I would think, obviously I'm not a professional. I am not doing what you're doing, but like I think to myself, like, how much could I get away with? Like how crazy can I like does that ever cross your mind? Do you ever feel like guilt, or is it like, oh, let's see how far we can push this?
well, I always say guilt is not an emotion I feel readily. Well, I mean, and also it's well, there's sort of things to keep in mind. One, just logistically, most platforms have a limit on how much someone can give you in the day for these
Sure.
exact
Yeah.
reasons, because they don't want chargebacks. And generally it's around $500, which isn't that much money. Some sites don't have that limit, but it's sort of, ooh,
Technical
hello.
difficulties.
Okay,
There we
there we
go.
go. Yeah. But it's like, so the other thing is that if I'm draining a client, and if it's a new client, I'm going to check in and say, hey, just want to check in with your limit right now, because we're about up to this much. Do you want to keep going? Because it's
Yeah.
important to have consent, even when you're online, even when you're doing financial domination, or sometimes like I will ask a client, like, what is your daily limit for spending with me, or weekly or monthly, or do you want to give me a budget, and what does that look like for you? So yes, you need to have consent, and yes, it's hot to like drain them until they cry and stuff, but it's all part of the game that we're all consenting to.
Yes, it's hot to drain them until they cry. Can I put it on a t-shirt? No,
Yes,
I
as
mean,
long as
yeah,
you quote me with my full name,
yeah,
Mistress
exactly.
Justine Cross.
But the consent, yeah, that makes sense of like, do you have basically like, what's your budget? What's your budget for me to go crazy? And for you, like, do they specify, oh, I just want cash, or, oh, I want to pay you in gifts? Like, how does that work? Do you get to dictate that, or do they dictate that?
Sometimes it's both. I mean, some people really only want to do one thing, like they only want to give you money in this one way. And
Got it.
sometimes you can tell them, oh, I really need this thing on my wish list, or these things, and that can happen.
I'm just wondering if you have a whole closet full of like Dior saddlebags. Like you open the closet and they like fall out. You're like,
I,
oh, another one. Oh God. Okay.
I don't, because I'm not a fan of Dior saddlebags, but I do have
Okay. Well, there you
many
go.
closets of shoes and lingerie and latex, and I'm actually just constantly like going through stuff to sort of get rid of a lot of things that I've just built up over the years. Like when I closed Dungeon West, I collected a lot of my stuff, that was in like I had like 6 closets across town, from my house and the 2 dungeons, to just like kind of get rid of everything when we moved. And I don't think I could have sold anything more, but I'm still just finding stuff like constantly, like, oh, okay, I don't need this anymore. I don't need this. And like, just to keep recycling and refreshing things. But, I don't get too many doubles of things. Although one time, like through a weird lark, I ended up with like 3 Jenga games, and I had to get rid of them. And because someone wanted me to do a custom clip with Jenga, and then he ordered one, and then I ordered one, and then someone else ordered me one on my wish list. And I'm like, I can't. I posted on my personal Facebook. It's not a long story, but I don't care to tell it. I have 3 Jenga games. Who wants them? And, was able to give them to people.
I immediately, my brain goes like, how can we make Jenga sexy? I'm like, all right. I don't know.
There's a kink for everything.
Yeah. Got it.